Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it is time for the Q&A. So I'm going to do this in two parts and hopefully get a gear talk up in a third later tonight for you guys. So let's go ahead and get this started. First question. Thoughts on doing standing overhead dumbbell extensions instead of skull crushers to target the long head? I prefer it over skull crushers simply because it's more practical and easier to set up. Just stand up with a dumbbell and do extensions behind the head rather than having to load up the bar and set up on the bench with skull crushers. I did, however, read that they have more tendency to give elbow pain than skull crushers, and there's nothing you can do about it technique-wise because you always have to grip it narrow. I don't have any elbow pain at all yet, but I hope I won't in the future. Alright, brother, that's a valid concern if you're using one dumbbell, particularly where you have both hands on the one dumbbell and you're forced to do it narrow, but you have other options available for this exercise. What you need to remember is that as long as you get a wide enough grip and you get a little bit of elbow flare at the bottom instead of keeping your elbows pulled in tight and your hands tight, you're less likely to get that inflammation in the connective tissue of your lateral and medial head. So what you can do, I want you to imagine if you grab two dumbbells instead of one and bring them down to your actual shoulders, you can flare the elbows out a little at the bottom and you can get it further behind your head. So you can get that stretch reflex or that myotatic reflex. That's what actually engages the long head the most. So you need to get that stretch, and you can do that actually with a pair of dumbbells very, very easily and still spread your hands out further. Furthermore, if this is the choice of isolation movements you want to do, you also have the option of doing it with a barbell. And at first that might sound crazy till you realize that if you take a cheater grip on it, a false grip, also known as a suicide grip with your thumbs under, and you should be able to research what that is easy enough, and take the same wide shoulder width grip, you can do the exact same thing with a barbell. Can absolutely be done. In fact, if you guys remember, I used to do those sometimes on camera. I used to crank out like sets of 10 with 135 pounds, doing those on a barbell for you guys sometimes instead of dumbbells, if you go back and watch some of my older training footage. So you actually have options there. So you don't have to just do it with one dumbbell if you're wanting to do this in order to get that stretch reflex that works the long head more, which is most guys' lagging head of their tricep if they're doing a ton of presses. All right, next question. Hey Jason, in order for the general public to stave off osteoporosis, improve joints, connective tissue, etc. through lifting weights, do we need to be chasing specific strength goals, or is it more important to just work the muscle through full range of motion in good form and focus on gaining muscle gradually? Thanks. No, for general health like that, you don't need to push anywhere near as hard as my novice program or anything does. You do need progressive overload, and really the osteoporosis is about full body joint loading. So people who don't want to get osteoporosis need to find a way to do bigger, heavier compound movements, squats, deadlifts, things like that, overhead pressing, push presses, all those are perfect, but you don't have to get brutally strong on those. Yes, your bone density will increase the stronger you get, but for example, if you have a man who can squat 200 pounds, deadlift 300 pounds, and overhead press 100, you've probably gained 90% of the bone density you're ever going to get from training. And obviously women can get even less. They don't have to lift anywhere near as heavy. Again, maybe half of those numbers are necessary. And if you're capable of doing that and you're loading everything up with moderately heavy weight for you every single week, a couple times a week, then no, you're going to get all of those health benefits we talked about. There's a difference between pushing for, maximum size and strength versus saying, what weight training do I need to do to glean the health benefits of it, the longevity, the improved quality of life. And you just don't have to train as hard or as heavy to do those, but you do need to get decently strong, meaning if you're not overloading everything with a heavier weight than it's used to, you're not going to see an improvement. But the thing is, once you get to those sort of numbers that I described there, you're probably already increasing bone density quite a bit, pretty dramatically. And if you maintain that strength, you don't need to progress necessarily to get those benefits because you're already forcing them to maintain. Again, your body being loaded up with a 200-pound squat or with a 150-pound squat for 5 or 6 reps every week is going to signal it that it needs to maintain that bone density, even the same amount that it's needed to have for years to lift that same weight. So yeah, you could keep doing that all the way up into your 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and it should maintain that bone density really well, and you avoid things like the osteoporosis. And the one caveat I'll add is that the joint health requires you generally to be training with full range of motion and keep everything balanced, meaning you can't have hamstrings that get weaker than your quads, you can't have triceps that get weaker than your biceps, you can't have rear delts that get weaker than the front delts if you want to maintain the joint health aspect of it. So just a little side note. All right, next question. Despite retracting my scapula and pausing at the bottom, somehow I injured my right shoulder while benching fairly heavy 6 months ago and haven't been able to bench or incline bench since. Somehow I can still do weighted dips with absolutely no pain. They have become my primary chest builder, and I have no problem doing flat or incline dumbbells. Do you know what the problem might be? I can't afford to see a doctor, so I'm currently avoiding any exercise that causes pain. Thanks for your input. Without observing your bench press technique, I couldn't tell you what the problem is, but if your technique was perfect, it could have been an issue of just weak rotator cuffs or weak rear delts. So again, I always tell you guys, if you're going to press heavy, you need to be doing a lot of face pulls, particularly, hopefully face pulls with bands, but cables work just as well. I think it's essential to maintaining that joint health, in addition to, again, keeping that bench width fairly narrow. The reason some of these other exercises are not hurting is it could have been from doing too wide of a bench press, and you've injured your shoulder, in which case it might be permanently injured or it might need surgery to repair it. Or it could simply be some inflammation in there that will heal over time. But the thing is, once you get inflammation from doing an exercise poorly or the wrong way, even a really wide grip bench press, it's always going to return eventually if you return to that exercise. So in that case, the way you need to think about it with dumbbells, you're generally forced to grip them narrower. Particularly what I tell guys, any of the dumbbell pressing, turn them into at least 45 degrees. Don't have them flared out to 90. And that should resolve your shoulder issues because it forces a narrower grip, it forces tuck. And the same thing with dips. Most dipping bars are set somewhat reasonably narrow, and if they're somewhat narrow, again, it's going to be easier on your shoulder joint. So there's a few things going on there as to why those exercises probably aren't bothering you. And again, I can only speculate as to what you did. I'm suspecting it might be inflammation of the tendons in the shoulder joint from gripping the bar too wide, but because I don't know what you did, I can only speculate at best. But because those other exercises don't hurt for you and you're able to progress on them, I think that could be one of the reasons I think what happened is from you gripping it too wide. In which case, just stick with those exercises. If you're not going to do the flat bench in competition and you have an injury from it or inflammation from it that's not healing, and you can do other exercises, and do those other exercises would be my best advice. Keep doing what you're doing until you can afford to see a doctor to find out what's going on, where they can at least MRI it and take a look. All right, next question. Is there any particular reason why someone might recover better and still grow stronger on a 3x10 when compared to a 5x5? I never personally am able to recover with 5x5, and after about 3 sessions I plateau. 3x10, however, as I'm still a noob, I find it much easier to add weight every week. This is referring to squats. No, not really. As a noob, you should be able to progress just fine on either one of those. You shouldn't have any problems like that. If you're having trouble with the 5x5 within 3 workouts as a novice, it's because you picked too heavy of a weight. You probably need to scale the weight back about 10 pounds and focus on the technique and being explosive on every rep rather than trying to go so heavy that you're forced to grind out the last couple reps at the end. If you're having to grind the last couple of reps, you're simply going too heavy and you're fatiguing your peripheral nervous system and stuff way too much for you to recover to be squatting 3 times a week. I'm assuming if you're doing a 5x5, you're doing 3 times a week. So that's probably the problem. You need to back the weight down, because in terms of actual recovery and workload, which should affect your progression, 3x10 and 5x5 are really, really similar. If you go do the math, look at the total tonnage moved, total reps moved, everything else, they're really, really going to be similar, unless you're just trying to go too heavy on the 5x5, which is what a lot of guys do. And one reason I have guys start fairly light on it personally, and then I have weight resets every time they plateau. And you might actually find, if you just did a proper weight reset, which is essentially what I just described, that everything will sort itself out and you'll be able to come back and do it okay. It's, again, you're pushing yourself too hard. So again, that's why weight resets and stuff are written into these sort of programs. Back the weight down a little bit and see what happens. All right, next question. What are your thoughts on direct ab training? Is it worth it? Can you develop better, more muscular abs if you train them? And if so, what would be a good way to incorporate them into your split? Would it be better to do them on a current rest day or the end of one of your workout days? I do an upper-lower rest split. All right, to answer your first question, yeah, core training, direct core training is a fantastic idea for improving your overall performance. Now, it might not change your look very much. There's a lot of misconceptions there that doing a bunch of ab work will dramatically change how your abs look. It won't change it a lot. It'll change it mildly. Most of your apparent ab development is going to come from your basic compound movements and just getting lower body fat and losing water and fat around your abdominals. You have to remember the abdominals are actually a fairly thin sheet of muscle, so they don't see huge amounts of hypertrophy that you can see normally. And that separation between the abs is actually because it's one big muscle, and it's caused by tendons that run across it and form that six-pack that you see. That's actually the tendon separating the same muscle. So you're not going to see dramatically visible hypertrophy there unless you've done years and years and years of heavy lifting for your abs, and then you might see a bit. But again, you're looking at performance and it carrying over to your other exercises. And yeah, if you have a really strong core from doing a lot of beltless work, extra core work, things like that, it will absolutely carry over to your overall performance and make you a better lifter. And if you're stronger on your other exercises from a stronger core, then obviously you're going to get better progress, better gains. I generally recommend that you don't do it on off days. The thing is, you're already training up to 4 days, maybe 5 days a week, because you're doing an upper lower off. That means you're on a 6-day split with only 2 days off out of that 6. So you're doing training almost every day as it is. You don't need to train your core on your off day. Your core already works on all of the days you're training. So if you want more development on it, you don't need to add extra days in so that it never gets a break from training. What I would recommend is you do it at the end of your workout. I don't like anyone doing core work before the end, because your core and your abdominals are needed to stabilize you for all of your other training. They're required. So if they're fatigued, it's going to reduce your performance in general. So I recommend doing ab work at the end of your workouts. And if you feel you're really lagging for core development, I would do it at the end of both of your workouts each time in your rotation. So you'd be doing your core pretty much 4 days a week on your split. And I generally like, because it has really good carryover to your other exercises, I like to see either cable or band crunches standing. Like you can go stand under a cable station and either grab like the rope attachment and pull it over your shoulders, and you can do standing crunches, or you can do the same thing with bands attached to the top of a cable station, like those cable crossovers, or you could do it inside of a dipping station, a power rack, whatever. There are points of attachment to where you can use bands to do crunches too. So those are your options, along with planks and weighted planks. And between standing crunches and weighted planks, you're probably going to develop about as strong of a core as possible, and you're going to develop it in a way that it's going to carry over to your other exercises, like your squat, your deadlift, your overhead press, your rows. All of that stuff is going to benefit from doing those two exercises. So that's my recommendation there. All right, next question. Hey, Jason. On average, how long does it take for testosterone to come back online after cutting and losing weight? I lost around 100 pounds, and unfortunately it still isn't back even after maintaining for past 3 months or so. All right, my first question would be, are you sure that you actually have low testosterone? Meaning, are you showing just signs and symptoms like low sex drive, low energy, or have you actually gone to an endocrinologist? Because if you've gone to an endocrinologist, he's going to be able to help you a lot more than I can, so there's no advice for me to give you. You need to talk to your medical doctor. If you're just seeing signs of low testosterone, like lack of sex drive, lack of erections, no morning wood, lethargy, stuff like that, then keep in mind there could be a depression component from the extended weight loss contributing as well. That might not be low testosterone. So look at all those different factors, and the only way you're going to know it's low for sure is going to be to go get blood work done. Now, the thing is, reduced testosterone can happen because you might be malnourished. You might not be getting enough dietary fat, all of that after you lost 100 pounds. You might want to look at your diet, make sure you don't have nutritional deficiencies, that you're not continuing to lose weight, because that's the big deal too. If you're still losing weight and your testosterone levels have crashed, you're going to struggle to get them back up without using something from your endocrinologist. He's probably going to have to help you in some way, because again, as long as you're losing weight, and particularly if you have any fat deficiencies, your body still isn't getting everything it needs to keep those levels up. It thinks you're starving, and when you're starving, the last thing the human body wants you doing is trying to reproduce, because sex burns a lot of calories, wastes a lot of energy. So again, your body's going to fight you on that. But if you're trying to maintain weight, if like you've lost your 100 pounds and you've been maintaining your weight for 3 months and you're still low, it might be time to look at your diet. Maybe you need to get a little more nuts and seeds in your diet, maybe a little bit of red meat. Maybe your diet is just too low overall in fat. And if it's too low in fat, or you're deficient in something because you're not getting enough vegetables or whatever after that big weight loss, that could be part of it. And if that's the case and you've been maintaining weight and you don't want to get blood work done yet, try just increasing your dietary fat a little bit. A little bit of peanut butter and steak will go a long way. And again, make sure you're getting plenty of vegetables. Make sure you're getting plenty of sleep. Insufficient sleep can also affect testosterone levels. And if that doesn't work after a month and you still haven't actually gone to see a doctor yet, maybe go get some blood work done and see where you're at and see if it's actually a problem or not and what your endocrinologist can recommend. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time in part 2, which might be up a little later today.